Hello friends, Brian Nissen here, Project Engineering Manager at QTS Medical Device Outsourcing. I'm here today with 3 quick tips on shelf boxes. So tip number 1, when you're choosing to put your artwork on your shelf box, consider how your artwork lands relative to the die cut of the box. A very common thing to do is to say, you know what, I want when my box is folded up to have one nice little half panel here where my panel has some art on it, and I don't want anything on the sides. And what you may have inadvertently done there is put your artwork ending directly on a fold line. What you should remember is that the manufacturer of these boxes does the printing step separately from the die cutting step, and the die cut is also where the folds are put in. So what we'll do is open this box up quick to make it look like what it looks like when it's printed and cut. So here it is opening up, and you can see that the die cut is this shape around the outside. It's actually would have a little flap over here because of the glue, but I cut that off in our operation here. And if you look, that printing is just a square, and the converter is going to have to land the die cut perfectly to these 2 edges of your art. So these fold lines, which are part of the same die that cuts these edges all the way around the outside, and there would be a big sheet, and generally there may be several of these on the same sheet that gets fed into the cutter. That gives them very little tolerance to be able to land this fold relative to this art. So that would be very hard to manufacture. Alternatively, what you can do is just space your art in a little bit from the edges, or just avoid ways where the art needs to interact, the edges of the art need to interact with the edges of the cutting or the folding. And there's lots of ways to do that. So tip number 2, here's some art that would conform to tip number 1. You know, this art goes, it doesn't have a whole lot going on. This point right here may cause an issue because they have to land this point relative to this fold right here. So you'd want to talk to your converter on that, but you can see generally this art doesn't interfere with the die cut. But this is another consideration for art, is choosing colors that work with your substrate. In this case, we have a very dark black with a white substrate. And what can happen is as you fold your box up, and sometimes things take a little bit of damage during our shipping, or maybe just during the general handling, you can see I've got this very dark edge on a very white substrate. And sometimes damage can happen to that. And so if during handling and distribution something comes to your box and goes like that, that shows up very brightly because we've got a white substrate and dark art. So just remember that sometimes things can hit your box, rub your box, somebody could drop your box, and you can wind up with your art looking kind of funky. So just avoid dark colors on white substrates going around those edges that are most likely to take damage. Okay, tip number 3, be mindful of where you put your tuck. So a lot of boxes will have a tuck something like this. In every box, when you fold it up, you wind up having a tuck. This little bit goes inside your box. And you can see when you put that inside your box, you wind up with a little edge just inside your box, just like that. And that can be a little edge that can catch things when you're loading your box. And what can happen is when you're doing things like loading trays, when your tray loads into your shelf box, if I just set my tray in there and loaded it up, that edge right there can sometimes catch on my tray during loading, and sometimes catch on things like this. See, I just caught my lid. Now there's lots of ways to control for this. You can just, in general, just load your tray the other way so it doesn't go in there. And there's other engineering controls if it's completely unavoidable that you can implement in process, but just avoid loading big flat things against that edge. Or a personal favorite of mine is if you have these instruction manuals, like we do in our medical devices, what you can do is you can take that front edge and you can protect the front edge of of your product as you load it in. If it's unavoidable to have that front edge, to have that edge hit the edge of your tray. Because now I've got a little protection going in with the stuff I was supposed to put into the box anyway. And so if it's something like a reverse tuck where one tuck goes one way and one tuck goes the other, if I load it with my IFU coming in like that, then later when I tuck my second side, I'm tucking on the safe side of the tray. Alternatively, you can choose to use straight tuck type boxes where the tuck goes the same way on both sides. All right, guys, so this has been 3 quick tips with Brian Nissen at QTS Medical Device Outsourcing. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope everyone has a great day.